Good leadership consists of showing average people how to do the work of superior people. John D. Rockefeller. Welcome to the Guyana Dialogue. I'm your hostess, Shamiza Ali. Tonight we will discuss housing development and water distribution. The Guyana Dialogue is being sponsored by a coordinating council of Guyanese based in the UK, Canada, the Caribbean, and Guyana. Funding support is by well-known philanthropist Dave Narayan from Dave West Indian Imports. Tonight we have an important press release to share with you in regards to Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. The New York Guyana Democracy Project has taken to task U.S. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries for his startling statements he uttered at a function on June 11, 2022 in a Brooklyn church. He pontificated not everyone in Guyana is treated consistent with the principles of equal protection under the law, adding, I will not tolerate racism in Guyana. These dogmatic statements were made without the support of any evidence. As a political leader, we recognize Mr. Jeffrey's right to speak out against any form of discrimination, including racism, wherever the evidence exists. What we disagree with is when distorted information and falsehoods are expounded and no attempt made to get the truth. Mr. Jeffries does himself no good when he publicly acknowledges a New York based provocator as his close friend. We wonder if Mr. Jeffries knows that a wanted bulletin has been issued by the Guyana Police Force for his provocateur. Here are a few points that we would like to make. With respect to poverty and inequality, both Afro-Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese, according to Professor Taran Kemaraj, have an almost similar level of poverty. Indo-Guyanese at 30% versus 31.6% for Afro-Guyanese and 33.7% for the mixed race. Two, there are limited data on income inequality. They are the national level. The Gini coefficient for Guyana was 45 compared with Trinidad with a score of 39 and Barbados with a score of 40. The lower the score, the better the income distribution. While the latter two countries have a better income distribution than Guyana, the difference is not significant. There was no score for individual ethnic group. 3. For 28 years, 1968 to 1992, the Afro-Guyanese based PNCR has been in power and had failed to produce the good life for their supporters as well as other Guyanese. They regained power in 2015 and has had no transformative projects to improve the lives of their supporters and others, even though they had raised taxes, the equivalent to 1/3 of the annual budget size. You should ask them what they did with the additional 90 billion Guyana dollars in revenues per annum that they collected. 4. The PNCR received 18 million US dollars as Exxon signing bonus, and no one knows about the disposition of this sum. 5. The PNCR regime gifted GCOM's CEO 200 acres of land as an apparent inducement to provide favorable 2020 election results. The PNCR aligned GCOM staff were caught in bright daylight on TV trying to hijack the 2020 elections when they blatantly falsified the electoral results for Region 4. Some of them have been indicted by the police for criminal conduct. 6. It is important that you know that despite the Afro-Guyanese population account for only 29% of the country's population, they dominate every sector of the public service. They account for 75% in the police force, 90% in the army, 95% in prison, 70% in public service, 80% in nursing, and over 80% are Afro-Guyanese. At the University of Guyana, most of the students are Afro-Guyanese, while 80% of academic staff are Afro-Guyanese. During the PNCR regime, 2016 to 2020, they recruited 1,600 individuals into the army, and over 80% are Afro-Guyanese. NYGPD's President Dr. Tara Singh asserts, "Let us be clear, we reject all forms of discrimination, including racism, and we join the majority of Guyanese people to subscribe fully to the One Guyana policy, whose foundational principles are equity, fairness, and justice. The Guyanese people are smart enough to understand issues and to not react to emotive outbursts. The days of race influencing voting patterns and race induced violence are gradually coming to an end. Those with better ideas and issues will prevail, and those imprisoned by race victimization theory will continue to languish and complain." Thank you for listening. Our moderator for tonight is Dr. Tara Singh. Joining us as well is Dr. Vishnu. Thank you both for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shamisa.
We are
Still there.
okay. And so
Okay.
our guest tonight, he is 41 years old and former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs. He was sworn in on August 5th, 2020 as the Minister of Housing and Water. He achieved a master's in business administration, majoring in internal business at University Melayu, which is in Malaysia, in 2007. His first degree was in business management at the University of Guyana in 2000. He is adamant about serving the housing needs of all citizens of Guyana. Please welcome the Honorable Collin David Croal.
Everyone.
Hello.
Okay.
Hello.
Good
Minister, how are
evening
you,
to
sir?
you.
It's a pleasure seeing you, and it's a pleasure to be here on your program.
Minister, before we start, would you like to say a few words about the Enmore Marta event that you just attended?
Oh, sure. Yes. Today is the anniversary and reflection of the Enmore martyrs and the struggle that would have been made. Sometimes when persons reflect on the struggles of our country, the history of our country, we tend to focus a lot on the recent history. But by and large, the role that would have been played then set the path for what was to follow. And as you've known, that also set the tone for our dear leader, founding member of our party, Dr. Chedi Jagan. And so that is where I was a few minutes ago. His Excellency, the President of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, was there, and he addressed the gathering along with union members, including the head of GAU.
All right, thank you. I think it's the 74th anniversary, and 5 people were killed. Now we want to go.
But going into Enmore and the history of Enmore itself, and with the vibrancy historically from the sugar estate, and going back into that community also gives you a bit of nostalgic feelings too, eh?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Let's go into our subject proper. I have a few questions for you. First, before you assume the ministerial portfolio of Minister of Housing and Water, you had to contend with backlog of housing applications. If you can discuss that a bit, how much you had, how you dispose of them, what's the current status?
All right, sure. So, well, first of all, we have to start, if we're going to do that, we have to start with the context of what is it that we campaigned on. what is in our manifesto commitment. And of course, we have the benefit of this sector where our then presidential candidate happened to be the former minister during the last PVP tenure, the former minister of housing and water. So it is obviously, we would have had insight as to what is required by the sector, and having, once we assume office, what is going to take place. So we got here. There were myself as Minister of Housing and Water, and then we also have Honorable Minister Susan Rodriguez, Minister within the Ministry of Housing and Water. And what we set out to do was first assess what is the situation that we have here at the ministry, to evaluate what was happening during the period, what they actually did, and what was required to take us forward in keeping with our overarching target of our manifesto commitments, which we'll speak about in a few minutes. And so when we took over here, what we found in the system is that you have about 70,000 pending applicants. The persons who have applied, they're within our system, they've gone through the process. You have a checklist of the requirements, a number of documents you have to show to satisfy the criteria to become eligible. And then you're classified based on your income, your proof of income, you're classified accordingly. So for example, if you're applying, you have different levels of your income that determines whether it's going to be low, whether it's going to be called moderate, middle, or high income. And so that is the first thing. Now you have to take that into context, whereby we committed and we campaigned that we will deliver 50,000 house lots within this our first 5 years in office. Now, also take that into context, whereby when you examine what the last government did in their tenure, they only allocated 7,500. So obviously, there was an anticipation, there's an expectation that the PBPC will deliver in this sector. And from all you've seen, and which we'll get opportunities to speak about, you can see we are delivering on that commitment.
So, one of the questions is that people have been questioning whether you can reach this 50,000 as contained in the manifesto. I know that will be a challenge, but let's talk about the house lots. Some people have been arguing, saying that you take over sugar lands to facilitate these house lots. What's the process to get it done? Do you have to get approval from Gaisuku? Are these abandoned sugar lands? Or what? If you can just walk us through that process so that Guyanese can get a better understanding. Because some people, for example, they raise question, the GRA was supposed to get a particular site, and now it's given to build a hotel, etc.
Sure, but before I do that, I just want to respond to the statement before your first statement, and that is with respect to us and our targets that we have set ourselves, and whether we will be able to achieve that, and the challenge, etc. We will achieve our target, and we will surpass our target. In fact, to date, we have allocated a total of over 11,000 lots across the country. Under 2 years in office, over 11,000. In this year, we are committed to allocating about 14,000. So it is expected by the end of 2022, by and large, we're at our midpoint. If you analyze counting from the August period, we will be halfway there and well on track to achieving that 50,000 target. Now to your other question in terms of land and the processes and the acquisition, etc. So every region has their local scenario. And so, for example, let me just use a current example. Yesterday, you would have heard the President, His Excellency, announcing about a program for Region 7 in Bartica proper, and that is for the construction of 500 houses, the acquisition of 120 acres of land, etc. Now, lands in those areas are under what you call under the Guyana Lands and Survey Commission, because GLSC is the custodian of state lands. So, the agencies that we are engaging with, dependent on where the lands are located, then we have various agencies. It's not only Gaisuku. And so, for example, if you're dealing with Region 5, then we also have to engage MMA, engaging them in acquiring new lands for housing development, suitability in terms of whether the land can be utilized for housing development, likewise the proximity, the location, etc. But most of the lands, the fact though is most of the lands, they come from through Gaisuku. Now there's an ongoing process and there's an engagement continually that is happening whereby, because Gaisuku have their plan. They have in fact, the president tonight was speaking about that. And so in their plan, they know where they're consolidating in terms of their production, where they're consolidating in terms of ensuring that they have not only productivity, but also they have to take on consideration whether the factories, it can be utilized there or not. And so it's an ongoing process. So yes, most of the lands come through Gaisuku. But, pardon me?
Let me ask you a follow-up question before it slipped me. The lands that you take from Gaisuku, do you reimburse them that whatever is the value of that land, and so it can go back to Gaisuku's credit?
So well, there is some compensatory that is involved. That yes, and that rate is determined through a valuation system.
All right. Another question. I know when the president was Minister for Housing, I spoke to him and I did an article that was published in Guyana too on what proportion of these house lots eventually they build houses upon them. And I think that was about, I can't remember, it was about 30%. But do you have a rough idea how long it takes if you allocate a house lot to a particular family, how long it takes them to build a house, what's the lag time, and there may still be some allocations or where there is no house. I know the last government has set a time limit. If you don't build a house within certain times, they may have to review the allocation. So if you can throw some light on that.
Right. So we have a department in the ministry through the Central Housing and Planning Authority that examine existing areas. These are for existing schemes for where there is no or little construction. So they normally engage persons and encourage them to be able to utilize the land for what it was intended for. And obviously, in most cases, would be housing purpose. But we do not have, we have not, and we do not have a policy of taking back lands of that were allocated for house lots and persons who do not construct. We have not enforced such policy. But we do have been encouraging persons, but we'll have to relook at some point because land, it obviously will become scarce at some point in time. And so we also have to examine all of that. And that is why it costs a lot for the infrastructure work that has to be done in order to develop these schemes. And the cost at which those beneficiaries get those house lots, it's at subsidized cost. Because when we're developing a scheme, the government is putting in the roads, the electricity, the utility services, well, both electricity and water, the road, the drainage, the culverts, etc., that are required. And obviously, these lands are being developed from scratch. So these are basically virgin lands. Obviously, the cost, that is why our infrastructure program is so costly, because you are developing lands from scratch that requires a lot of work. Many times they're even water soaked in previous usage, probably lying there for years, not doing anything. And so, yes, we do target those such persons. We encourage them to build, but I've not, as a minister and as a government, we have not taken away land from anyone. We have honored all commitment What we have, though, is that once you are allocated, then you're required to pay in such land. But if you do not pay, then we can have a process that sees us taking back such lands if you do not pay.
Mhm. Now, the housing schemes that you set up, can you tell us how many housing schemes you established and the types of housing schemes, like the professional, young professional, the various categories are low income, moderate income, high income housing, and where they're located?
So let me go from the top of my head. Currently, we have a number of new schemes that since we got back into office, we have established. And I also want to make this point before I give you some breakdown. We have also honored some allocations that were done during the last government tenure. We have honored those allocations by embarking on providing the infrastructure work for those areas for which allocations have been done. They have done zero in the sense of developing any new scheme. So in essence, what are some of those new schemes, for example, that we have started on? If we examine East Bank, you have areas such as Diamond, not the old Diamond, but these are new Diamond in terms of Great Diamond. You have an area called Golden Grove. We also have coming down the line, we have at Horstelling. On the East Bank, for example, we have areas such as Strathspey, Vigilance, Bladen Hall. These are all new areas. LBI, Lebon Intention, that's a high-priced area. We have, for example, I think on average, since we're back in office, we have established about 22 new areas. So let me go then by region so we can have a little breakdown. You have in Region 2, in the Charity proximity, there's an area called Buxton as well as St. Joseph. That's where we have ongoing construction now. And so those target included more, because it's Essequibo, more moderate, middle. And then there's another area, an expansion of the Phase 4 on the Niming in Region 2. We have catered for low and moderate. Then when you go to the Region 3, coming down the line, we have new areas such as Plantation, Edinburgh, Corneda Ida, Anna Katrina, Strodeville, Metamerzog. Those are more both low, three categories: low, moderate, middle. We have done, and they're ongoing. Maybe you come to Region 4, you have an area called La Reconnaissance. We have started there. That's more low and moderate. We have Plantation, Cummings Lodge. This is a new area, and a lot is happening in that area. We have houses that are being constructed. So that has all categories, where both low, moderate, middle, high, depends on where they fall. On the East Bank, as I mentioned, you have Little Diamond, Great Diamond. We have moderate, those are most high, moderate, and low. Then we have Great Diamond, as I said, Golden Grove, an area called Golden Grove. That is just beyond the existing diamond that you know, the old diamond. In Region 5, we have established a new area called Baltiok. Region 6, you have at the New Amsterdam proximity, when you're crossing that bridge, you only have to look to your right-hand side, the Ordnance Fortlands, but you're accessing it from the other side. That's a new area where you have both moderate and middle. We're constructing, by the way, currently 100 houses there. We've just only a few days ago, we allocated 30 of those houses. Then you also have Plantation Williamsburg in Berbice itself. We catered for moderate and middle income. Hampshire. So both Williamsburg, Hampshire. We have another 100 houses that are being constructed there. About 60 is complete now. And very shortly, the other 40 will finish. And we have found land to do very close by to construct another 59 houses there. Then you also have 75 and 79 villages in Berbice. Not only George Coastland, we have in Region 9, for example, Letem, we have a new area that we're developing there. So that is catering for low, moderate, and middle. And last but not least, you have Region 10, for example. You have the Amelia's Ward. It's been in the news. Maybe you can speak on that in a few minutes. But you have a new area, Amelia's Ward Phase 4, for where we've allocated 400 lots, in fact. And so a lot is happening. On average, I would say is about 22 areas that are under construction. And of course, more will be done.
So in the 5-year period term of the PP's government, how many housing units your ministry plan to construct? What's the goal, the objective?
Right. So we have, our president has mandated us, and because we want to, in this period or henceforth, we'll push to have more home construction. And so you will see a lot of our program is geared towards encouraging construction of homes, and for many obvious reasons. But we have already started that. So, for example, if I can give you some areas where we have house construction taking place. On the East Bank, we have about 200 houses being catered for in a young professional scheme. That's in the Providence area. A lot of persons have been asking about that area, and even visitors that come. But obviously, there's only so much we can construct. And those houses, there are two models that are being utilized. You have the elevated as well as the 3-bedroom flats. And then at the Prospect, we have a number of young professional houses that are being constructed there too. As well as low income, we also have a number of low income houses. So in the Region 3, very shortly we'll be starting the project for the construction of 1,500 houses there in Region 3, for example. In Region 6, I mentioned to you, we have 200 that are ongoing. Region on the East Coast, we have about 650. When in the LBI proximity, for example, the land preparation is ongoing. We have about 650 houses, young professional, that will be constructed there, that we plan to have ongoing. What am I saying here in conclusion to your question? We are working currently to have thousands of houses being constructed. We are engaging a number of persons too. And some of those you will see at being displayed at our building expo to be held on July 22nd to 24th. We have a number of houses, model houses, that will be on showcase. And in that, we are also working with other companies internationally who will be working with us to provide a number of houses. But of course, there must be a criteria. It has to be affordable. We are very cognizant to ensure that the housing prices the houses that are built, that they are being provided at a certain cost. We have a cap for the various categories of houses that are being constructed. Mm-hmm. So, for example, the low income will go at, for example, at 5.5. You have moderate, 7.5. You have the young professional houses, those are about 13.9. And then you have also close to $20 million. We are now offering through a new program that was launched by our president a few weeks ago, the Home Construction Assistance Facility, whereby on that we are offering 3 models to encourage home ownership again. But the difference with that model is that it's not only applicable to lots where you come through the government housing program. We are also encouraging private landowners to be able to build. So we are working in close collaboration with the banks. And there are 3 models of the houses that we have provided. Those are $7 million, $9 million, and $12 million that we have offered so far. But sometimes as part of family, you inherit lands from your grandparents, etc., or you have the land there, but there are difficulties acquiring loan to start construction. Sometimes the equity, because for persons who are renting, the money that they pay towards rental can go towards a monthly mortgage. But what has been a hindrance for many of them is whether in the 10% or the 5%, for now, some of them, the banks are charging 5%, the equity to put up that 5% to start on their loan. The land now can be offered as the equity. So in essence, all you need to do is be able to be pre-qualified Once you satisfy the bank the criteria that they satisfy that based on your income, you'll be able to pay X amount every month. Then the land will be offered as the equity. So us here at the ministry and this housing and water and the Central Housing and Planning Authority, we are providing ourselves as the guardian in all of this arrangement. And so we are bringing closer the connection between the banks and the potential homeowners. And that is what we are doing all the time.
Okay, do you plan to take the professional housing program to the other regions of the country?
Our housing program will go to all parts of the country. The issue is that because you have asked for the professional houses, you have to analyze the scenario on the ground, the level of income in terms of the persons that are earning. So that is why we have different types of designs and model houses to suitability for the location. And so that, for example, those, by and large, the $20 million young professional houses, if you go to certain regions, then you would not necessarily have a fair amount of persons being able to pre-qualify to get a loan in that bracket. So we are adaptable to the situation or to the level of income on the ground.
Okay.
But all regions will benefit.
What the public will want to know, what criteria you all apply to grant house lots and housing to particular groups or sets of people?
So the house lots it's a simple process. Well, you can do this first of all for application. You can do this two-way. You can start online, submit your documents, or you can fill out the forms and do that right at the regional offices as well as the central ministry. But in order to complete your application process, you must have an interview conducted. And that is important because the staff has to ask certain questions. They have to examine the documents submitted. And that is why once the interview is conducted, you are then issued a letter that is basically the acknowledgement letter. Because sometimes when person receive that letter, they assume that is an immediate allocation for a particular area. So that acknowledgement letter says three things. One, it states the date that you were interviewed or that you've completed your application. Two, it also states your level of income. Because not your level of income, but based on your income, it states the classification for which you will qualify. So from that letter, when the staff is reviewing, if you come to the ministry now, you say, hey, this is my acknowledgement letter. They can read that and they can know what is your classification that you're looking for. And of course, I said to you just now about the completion of the interview, your application date, and and your classification. Having acquired that, we go through a process. We try to go to our backlog because we also have a system. We have an LMS system from which we pull from. But the reality is, and we also have sometimes when we have targeted allocation exercises because we have to take cognizance of what is happening in the region. So sometimes we have follow-up issues. We have follow-up requests that can be done. We have special requests based on particular needs. Sometimes those things come from the Ministry of Human Service because of a particular issue that may arise of somebody need assistance. Those sort of things we do respond to. So by and large, we go back into our system. We go back to those persons who have that have been inquiring. Those have been updated, and we respond to that.
Okay, if a person is unemployed, no member of the family is working, can they apply for a house lot or a housing unit?
So but if they're unemployed, the difficulty would be their classification because they're not showing a source of income. But once in the interview process that they can satisfy to say how they will be able to pay for that land, well, then that information is inputted into the system and then they can be allocated. So I'll give you a simple example. I may be unemployed, but in my situation, I have family members who might be willing to assist me. We do take that into consideration.
All right.
But you'll have to state that or you'll have to put that in an affidavit.
This is a very important point I want to raise, Joe. It has been raised.
But yes, but I also want to make a point too, but that persons who, even pensioners, have been applying too, and they've provided their status of, that they're earning, this is only their pension that they're earning through and they're dependent on.
Okay, a major issue is people have been saying that the government is allocating housing units, house lots on ethnic basis. That is a consideration. So what can you tell them? Do you have data on the allocation on ethnic breakdown?
First of all, absolutely not. We do not take into consideration when we are addressing allocations, whether it's house lots, whether it's for houses. The only criteria is that you have to be a Guyanese and you have to satisfy our application system, and so you have to have a pending application, and that is the only criteria that we apply. We do not do racial profiling of our applicants.
I understand that, but what do you tell people when they make the arguments that the government is discriminating, they're giving one group preference over the other? What data you have to satisfy them? I mean, they can listen to what you're saying, but they want evidence. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, names are confidential, obviously, because we have to protect those applicants. But look at all of our dream realized activity, all our land allocation activities, all our house lots allocation, as well as for houses. You look at the audience that are there, and you will see a cross section you'll see a Guyanese response. We do not necessarily go to area, because I'm not aware of any area that you will have persons who are benefiting and you see one race that is benefiting. I mean, we can go back into our system. We can do profiling on names and ask and say, based on, maybe your name is Singh. Let me do a profiling. We do not do that. We have the names of persons, but absolutely not. And I can provide information the persons need, but absolutely we don't profile persons by ethnicity.
No, I'm not referring to profile. I'm just referring to creation of statistical data to show to people who want to say that there is discrimination in the allocation of house lot and housing units. That's all.
Well, all I can do simply just ask them to judge us by record, drive into any one of the areas where we have occupancy, and you will find that there's absolutely no one person race you see occupying those areas. But I want to make a point though on when we're allocating, because sometimes there are persons who come and they ask, I want a corner lot. I know my friend is also getting through, so I want to be able to be near my friend, those kind of things. We don't allocate the lots. The lots are all pulled from an envelope. We have the numbers. They are placed in an envelope. So you are pulling. So none of us, until you pull, knows who our neighbor will be. So that too is one safety mechanism that we have to ensure that we protect the integrity of our allocations that are being done.
Thank you. Now I pass to Vish.
Yeah, Minister, good to see you again.
Hello. Oh, hi. How are you doing?
Just a few comments. I travel to Guyana quite often, and I spend considerable time. I visited not necessarily you or your office, but I was outside, and I did so during the coalition tenure as well. So I can tell viewers or listeners that during the period when I visited during the tenure of the coalition, when I looked, I saw practically only one ethnic group. And in recent visits over the last 20 months or so, I saw a complete diversity, a complete reflection of representation of what is Guyana in terms of ethnicity. So I must commend and applaud the government in that. But a lot of the diaspora is watching this program. So I want to ask you, so far you haven't talked about the diaspora. What kind of programs, housing accommodation programs, incentives for the diaspora?
Well, before you do that, I want to start, but I'll answer you, but I want to bring into focus they recently passed condominium legislation that we had, because persons in diaspora too want to condominium is as condominium, townhouses, etc. That's a type of housing that those persons also seek to inquire about, and even investors who are coming in to invest. So we've just passed the condominium bill, and so after that, very shortly, we announce in terms of the regulations, etc., because there's the administrative arm that we're setting up. And in fact, His Excellency the President has already assented to that bill. So you have to say it's into law officially. And that's one area persons have been asked, because even if they come, they can be, both ways. They come, they can stay. They don't want to have that hassle of having to leave a yard space and have to maintain that yard space. But we have also been encouraging persons to come home. And I know persons who want to come home have been asking, there are many questions that, they ask a lot of questions. But security of tenure sometimes is one of the questions the diaspora asks. So I say, I want to come back to Guyana. What is it that you have to encourage me to come home? What is it you have to encourage me to stay? So as I said to you earlier, the application process is open to all Guyanese. And so we have initially, years back, you had a remigrant scheme, yes. We're working on another scheme, but there's nothing preclude those persons who have gone through the application process. They are back home. And now that they're back home, they've indicated that they are part of the process, and they will be dealt with accordingly. Because as I said earlier, we don't discriminate in terms of any category of persons. We want to encourage all categories. We have to encourage even young professionals to get lots earlier, their home or very early, so that they can, in their lifetime and their life expectancy, that they can take a mortgage and they can pay on that loan and they can start their family, etc. So we are encouraging that, and that's why that category of the houses that we talk of, we call it young professional, because it is to encourage persons in the profession, engineers, the medical field, etc. So persons who have a fixed income and a particular category or level of income that they can pay for. So yes, certainly I would want to encourage the diaspora that's an area that they can look at. You have a number of, once they build the law, we set up everything in terms of administering the law, a lot of persons can tap into that. So that's one area I will answer you in terms of the diaspora and housing.
And financing, same kind of arrangement with the local banks?
Yes, certainly. But in some cases, if you have the full cash, well, then you come through the system that can be dealt with too.
I wonder if you could talk a little more about financing for local Guyanese.
Sure.
Questions were asked when I've traveled around. You had indicated, and they also admit, look, I don't have the money right now to build a house. Could you elaborate a little the arrangement that's being made with some of the banks? I know NBS is one of the banks.
Right. So,
to provide this kind of facility.
So, let me give you the system that we have for the persons who are pre-qualifying for the house. So they have to sign up. Well, one aspect is that you must be an applicant in our system. So you have to be that you have applied. So we have established that early in the interview. The next stage is that you have to indicate that you're interested in terms of our housing program. And having indicated that, there's a pre-assessment that we do, a quick assessment to see the relevant category that you maybe possibly can qualify for. But we do not do the pre-qualification. We then send that information on to the bank. The bank, when they're ready and they've been responding very quickly, they will call that potential applicant in. They will have their own due diligence interview, etc. Once it's established that that person can qualify for the category, whether it's the moderate income, whether it's for the young professionals, etc. Once they establish that, the bank prepares that letter and sends it back to us. And with that, we use that when we are allocating, because if Collin goes through the system, gets pre-qualified from the bank informs the ministry. Then when the ministry is ready to allocate, then they take all those persons that they need to pull from that are already pre-qualified, and then you make an allocation for the house. So you will very well have in our pool at any time more persons that are pre-qualified than even the actual amount of houses that we'll be able to respond at this point. But we will be able to respond to all because, as I said, we're working on a massive program for response to housing, the housing drive from all factors, whether from how government sector, whether from the private home constructors contractors too. We are responding to that. So a lot of persons who have been knocking on our doors almost every day and say, "Hi, I've not heard my name called," etc. There'll be an opportunity for all of you, with certainly with a response of 50,000, overarching where you say our system has 70,000. And no doubt, some persons have probably gone, to other shores. It may be you can find that you'll get a response. But I want to let you know at the same time, while we inherited 70,000, because of the success in the housing sector, because a person seeing that we're responding, because a person seeing the vision and the commitment by this PPC government, we have now in the total pending applicants, although we have allocated 11,000, we have 83,000 pending applicants. Think about that. Why? Because persons now see they're becoming, they become of age, and they now see, yes, in some time in the future, they will have that opportunity to apply to benefit, whether it's a lot or the housing.
Okay. I just want to ask you a quick question, and let's move on a little to spend a few minutes on water. But are you planning to upgrade the building code in Guyana to make it compatible with all these new developments?
Right. So, well, let me start with, there are many aspects that we're working on. And so as the dynamics of our country change, obviously, we also have to evolve in relevant regulations. We don't want to make it to the system in such a way that you're disencouraging, but of course, we must follow the norms. Here is where I also want to pitch in the aspect of where we're working at through the Central Housing Planning Authority. And that is with respect to our electronic single window processing unit. And with that, we're in that system, it will be fair, equitable. You can be wherever you have your documents uploaded and you can have by a predetermined time, pending applicants be dealt with. Because one of the issue, you talk about diaspora, let me make this point. It's persons who have been coming back home to invest. One of the issues they've mentioned to me is the relevance or in terms of familiarity with certain agencies or offices. And so if they're not familiar with the offices, then they tend to come and have a dragged out period of time waiting. It removes the subjectivity, what we're doing. We will at the end of the process, will legislate time bound for a response. So persons who have those approvals waiting, we have to get fire service sometimes. We have to have the Environmental Protection Agency, no objection. We have to have the local authority, whether it's the municipality or the NDC, to give their no objection on an application process. So you know what happens there right away, because if at a political level from one local authority, they have a particular problem with the person who are applying, then we end up waiting long. And that is why sometimes our approval system looks like it's taking a while. But that is why it's not that here, but we have to depend on other agencies for their response, because their response form part of the report that will go before the Central Housing and Planning Authority Board. So that's one aspect. So I just wanted to pitch in that to let you know we are working on a lot of things here to modernize as part of our modern legislation. So coming back to the other aspect in terms of building. So we have a planning unit here at the Central Housing Planning Authority, and we have been encouraging persons who want to invest to make a stop at this unit, because get the best possible advice. Because one of the pitfall I also find, in addition to where you ask about the actual construction building, is the land use. You have persons who have been purchasing land with hoping that they will embark on different business adventure, whether it's in the oil and gas, whether it's for other commercial purpose. But the land use where they purchase may not, where the area it falls in, may not be suitable for the type of investment that they're looking for. So we have such persons who are falling in this trap too. So I'm encouraging, and I'm making a plea here to even for the diaspora, because locals may have more knowledge, local knowledge. please stop at the planning unit of the Central Housing and Planning Authority as the first-stop agency for your guidance, for your advice. If you are thinking of acquiring land, purchasing, whatever the case, and embarking on commercial, industrial activities, ensure that you get the guidance that the land use can accommodate the purpose you're intending for. And then now to the other part you're asking about is that we have been providing guidance in terms of how these buildings should be constructed. And it is something we have to further pay attention to, because I anticipate more rising kind of buildings. Obviously, because with more this level of investment in our country, the type of investors that are coming here, you will very well find a lot of more high-rise type of buildings. And so we obviously have to respond. We have been responding here as an agency, but it's something we also have to keep discussing about to ensure that the quality is delivered and you get what you pay for too, right?
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to water.
Sure.
When PP took over government, what was the state of potable water throughout the country? What percentage of Guyanese was getting drinkable potable water?
Understand.
So
70%, 80%, 90%, or what?
Sure.
And what's the current situation now? And your plans for drilling new wells, etc.
So if you want to use one agency to assess how Guyana has suffered in the pre-2020 period, the August 2020 period, use Guyana Water Inc. The staff there doubled, increased from 600 plus to 1,300 plus. But yet the level of service, customer service, did not increase, depreciated in fact. There was no stockpiling of materials to carry out repairs. So you had a lot of leakages in the system. Leakages were not being addressed in a timely manner because materials were not being stored to even do that. You had increase of the non-revenue water. You had increased wastage. You had all of that taking place. And so we quickly dissected and assessed what had to happen there. And so Guyana Water Inc. is operating with a 5-year plan, a 2021 to 2025 strategic plan. And that strategic plan is also tied in with the SDG, well, what we call the SDG 6 or Millennium Goal 6, which speaks about water and sanitation by 2030 for all, and not the year 2030. But His Excellency, the President, is committed that more resources will be pumped into Guyana Water Inc. to ensure that we are able to deliver on our commitments, not 2030, by 2025. So we're talking about two and a half to 3 years from now. So what is it? What is the level of that we have going on? Now, as testimony for that, in the last 2 years, over $15 billion have been injected to GWI. Over $15 billion. Hinterland itself and the hinterland communities, and I'll speak on the coastline in a few. Hinterland communities, we have under 60% are accessing water. Under 60%. Coastland, we had, when we took over, you did not have full access. We had about 94%. We are committed that potable water to 100% in 2025, which it will include all and new access areas, because we will understand too that Guyana Water Inc. program is tied in with Ministry of Housing. Well, Ministry of Housing is the overarching ministry. Central Housing and Planning Authority, GWI, are two agencies under the ministry. But their work program has to take into consideration the new schemes we are developing as part of our housing program, because they have to respond. Then for the hinterland, we are committing that by 2025, we will have 100% access across the hinterland. That is the sort of commitment. But there's something I want to speak about, and it's current. The level of service received by household is one issue. The quality of service is another issue. So no money was being spent on the better water delivery to your household, meaning to have treated water. What's the status of GWI? Only 52% of the coastland were benefiting from treated water. Just over half of the coastland population. And you'll recognize majority of the population is on the coastland. So that gives you a scenario. What is our response? Our response is that we have already set it up. We set up a department specifically in GWI to focus and target on treated water, and it will cost us billions of dollars. In fact, we expect within the next 2 years to inject in the area of treated water to inject about $25 billion. Right now, we have advertising for the construction of 7 new treatment plants. In addition to that, we have another 5 that is being funded through the CDB. With that, next week, we have another advertisement that will start for 12 areas where we have treatment plants for the construction of inline filters to support, because you'll have the massive treatment plants, and then in between you have the inline filtration system to help us to have that water coming to the households. Now, why am I emphasizing on the treated water? Everybody is talking about Guyana, better Guyana. And our government is committed to ensure that we respond in a timely manner, because as our country rise and as the expectations rise, because as we are able to ensure that everybody has water, then there's another expectation, that is the quality of the water coming to the household. And so we are intended to respond to that, and one can expect from now onwards, we will have massive investment in GWI for ensuring that we are able to increase within the next 2 years by 38% from that 52 by 38%, because we want to ensure that we achieve 100, or at least 90% of treated water by 2025. And so that alone will tell you the commitment by this government. We have also here, the ministry through the central housing, we have also been supporting GWI to ensure that we continually drill wells. There's a number of wells that are being drilled both in-house and external. We have beefed up our capacity too. We have procured new rig. So for example, we have a new rig that is in the Morocco sub-region in Region 1 that is drilling its first well. It's arrived in the country and we sent it there straight, because this will help to fast track the delivery within the hinterland. So our response by GWI is not just based on coastland. It is based on ensuring that everybody gets a better level and quality of water. Tomorrow, His Excellency, the President, for example, will be visiting a number of communities in the Upper Mazroni Region 7. That's an area that mostly the water is sourced from from the river. So we have been drilling, we have been investing in those areas to ensure that we drill new wells. The logistic to take a rig into those communities, it's costly, but it must be done. And so we are committed to that. And so we have, for example, you ask about GWI, we have customers who were denied new services. So that was the status where we took over at least about 5,000 customers who were denied new services. These are people who applied and waited for GWI to be able to respond, to come to be able to give them a connection. We have a massive metering program that is ongoing, because we must, in order to improve our performance and level of service in GWI, while I spoke about coverage, I spoke about treated water, we must also speak about the reduction of non-revenue water, reduction of the level of leakages in the system, wastage. And that is something that we're working heavily to ensure that we are able to deliver, because you will recognize there's a fair amount of wastage in the system. We have sought to also have most of the GWI services be able to be accessed electronically. So you don't have to call on a phone. You can do this electronically to report a fault. If you have a fault to report, if you have a leakage to report, we have a WhatsApp that you can send that information. So those are some of the things that we're working on to improve in terms of Guyana Water. But you can expect, I know I know you might say I'm optimistic, but I'm not optimistic, because we have a work program that we're working in. For example, I can tell you what we are faced with. Here in Georgetown, we have a number of old transmission lines. These are the huge mains pipelines. For example, last year we changed them from somewhere in the vicinity of the Cemetery Road to Mandela. We changed that pipeline. We are currently working on the shelter belt along the Church Street that goes to Light Street. We are on the Merriman's Mall that you might be familiar with. We have pipes that are being run there. Why? These are the archaic pipes. These are pipes that are centuries old, but we could not increase the pressure for certain areas of Georgetown because leakages will develop. They cannot handle the pressure. For those who come visit Georgetown often, sometimes you drive around by the Bank of Guyana, the center of there, you often see leakages develop. That is because on the ground, there's an old pipe system. Our government is investing to change that. Well, you know what? Yeah, only 2 days ago, we had a matter that arose. The City Council of Georgetown passed a resolution to stop the work. Why? Because they do not want the pipe to run through the Merriman's Mall. Why? Because some grouping they leased the area out to some grouping. They want us to move the pipe to run near the drain, near to the canal, which cannot work, obviously. And those are some of the things that we have. But, these are developments that are taking place. There are millions of dollars we are investing in because we have a mandate to increase the level of service across our country. And we're committed to that.
Okay, finally, what's your relationship with working with the local authority areas?
So you'll have both municipal. Well, by and large, it will be three, because you have the regions, you have the municipalities, and you have the neighborhood democratic councils. We do have close working relationship with all, because there are issues that arise with what we have to address here that falls in those local authorities. Dealing with unregulated areas, dealing with squatting, for example, that falls within those areas, and very often the local authorities reach out to us seeking assistance to help to relocate persons, to help if we have to examine that if we can have those persons regulated to stay where they are. The local authorities reach out to us. We do have issues sometimes that both for water too. If you have issues that arise that require us to work, yes, we work in conjunction. I know the mayor for Georgetown has been trying to reach out because he wants to sit up on the board, but we don't see a role for that. We have a working relationship, and that is how we'll continue. The board of I want to make an important point. The Central Housing and Planning Authority Board, all of the municipalities are represented on that board. So the reps all sit on our CHPA board. And so in some cases, they send the town clerk. Some cases, it's the mayor. Some cases, the deputy mayor. So they also have an input there. And so there is working relationship. But sometimes, of course, politics get in the way. And when your development looks good, the PVPC, for them, it look good. And that's not how we're operating. We are operating on a premise that we are elected here to make the lives of our citizens better. We are elected here to bring betterment for our people. We are elected here to bring comfort to our people. And that is why you've seen the measures that have been introduced by this government is all helped and geared towards helping all of our beneficiaries. I'll give you a couple examples if you can quickly. For example, in the construction sector, we removed the VAT on construction materials. Water, We remove VAT on water. The last government had VAT on water and electricity. This government removed it. We reduced the water rates by 5% when we got into office. We have a subsidies program, the water that is delivered to pensioners. The water is subsidized for the pensioners. All of that we have as a government that is to help to ease the burden for our citizens. So you can see from our policies, from what I'm outlining, it is helpful to gear towards ensuring that as quickly as possible. We have little time for negativities. We have to take that in consideration. We use that as a guidance and we use that to see what we can improve on. But at the end of the day, in order for us to build this one Guyana that President Irfan Ali has outlined and charted for us, this one Guyana will need everyone on board. And so hence it is the same when we're delivering our products or services. It is, we don't look of political source persuasion because we are elected here to serve all the people of Guyana. So we don't look to political persuasion. We don't look to or racial background. We don't look to none of that. We look to ensure that we are able to deliver in a timely manner. And our president has been driving us. He's, we have a youthful president. Very often I can tell you sometimes by the time I'm up in the morning, I see, it says you can see there's some message from him because I'm inquiring on a matter. So you can tell that he takes little sleep, right? And that is what is required to ensure that we move quickly to drive our country forward.
Thank you very much, Minister. Very informative, educative. I think a lot of people will get a better understanding of the workings of your ministry, including the accomplishments and challenges. And I'll pass you on to our host, Shamisa.
Well, thank you, Dr. Tara. Thank you, Dr. Vishnu. Tonight we heard a young, vibrant minister speak on topics and different things that, it's fun listening to it. And it's also a lot of knowledge, a lot of understanding of the housing and water authority right now in Guyana and what's happening there. And he addressed it with such knowledge, such positivity that I can probably listen to him for another hour, but with the essence of time, we do have to, move forward. But there is no doubt that we have a one Guyana process in place, especially when we have someone like Minister Croal who's there and who is doing what he's doing. So definitely it's a one Guyana, and I'm proud to see his work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. And
Thank you, Minister.
Continue with the
And I must thank you very much for having me. And it's always a pleasure to be back at any point in time for us. Even if we want to go into, because today didn't allow us to go into detail certain aspect, but I wanted you to understand the broad outline of what is taking place and probably what is to come. And so thank you so
very much.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you and goodbye.
And thank you to all our viewers as well that are watching. Have a good evening.